My dear brothers and sisters in Christ, today we celebrate the feast of the presentation of the Lord. A feast that honors a Jewish tradition, and yet a feast that also speaks to us of Christ the child. This feast falls 40 days after Christmas, and it celebrates the purification of Mary and Joseph. At the same time, it celebrates the presentation of the child to God. According to Jewish custom, first-born sons belonged to God, and they were to be consecrated to Him. And yet there was a provision that they could be redeemed by making an offering to God. And today the parents of Jesus do just that. Therefore, this feast celebrates Jesus, who is recognized as the light of all nations. It also celebrates the dedication of Jesus to do the work of God. Thanks be to God, John Paul II invited the church on this day to celebrate vocations to consecrated life. Men and women who have consecrated themselves to serve God in the church. We will celebrate the Mass in the evening. But for us now, it suffices that we pause and we'll reflect on the figure of Simeon, an old man who never left the temple because he had been given God's promise that he will not die without seeing the salvation of God's people. When the parents of Jesus enter the temple, Simeon is there. And he asks that he be given the child. He holds the child in his hands and he says the Nunc Dimittis. That prayer which those of us who are familiar with the breviary say every night. At last, O powerful Master, now you can let your servant go in peace. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you prepared for all nations, the light to enlighten the Gentiles, and to give glory to Israel, your people. When we sing the song before going to bed, I think there's a sense in which we rob it of its meaning and context. When Simeon sings the song, he is making an assertion. That which the Lord had promised me has been fulfilled. Now that I have seen the salvation of God, not only of Israel, but of all God's people, I can go in peace. In his song, Simeon sings of light. He sings of glory. And yet, in the same reading, Simeon reminds us that the road that leads to light and glory is the road that takes us via Dolorosa. For he turns and says to Mary, you see this child. He will stand to be a contradiction of many. He stands for the rise and the fall of many in Israel. As if that is not enough, Simeon says to Mary, a sword will pierce your heart too. My dear brothers and sisters in Christ, how appropriate is the celebration of this feast during this COVID pandemic? When we who believe in the salvation and the glory that lies ahead have come to know suffering and pain in our days.